Hey, welcome to Apologetics for Everyone. So I've been avoiding or putting off talking about this issue, but I can't take it anymore. I feel like we have to have this conversation and we have to get at the truth, because there are a lot of dishonest forces in this world that are lying to you and lying to others, and it is resulting in the death of people. And we need to have a serious conversation about it. And I want to ask you, please just hear me out. I'm happy to accept your pushback and your criticism, but if I'm right about what I'm talking about and what I believe the Bible teaches and what I believe science teaches, we are involved in a holocaust of epic proportions that make Hitler seem simple, and it needs to be stopped. And I realize that some of you, many of you, have a personal stake in this because of decisions that you've made. Maybe you've been lied to. Maybe you thought this idea, my body, my choice, or I get to choose what I do with my own body. And so you've believed this, or you fell for it. But I want to tell you, the truth is the truth. And the God of the universe is a loving and forgiving and merciful God. And we have all sinned. I've sinned. We've all made mistakes. And I realize that some mistakes that we make, some sins that we commit, have very serious consequences. But the truth is the truth. And God says in 1 John chapter 1, verse 9, that if you confess your sins, He is faithful and just and will forgive you of your sins and purify you from all unrighteousness. God will forgive you. And because I made a mistake doesn't mean that I should just keep making that mistake or encourage others to do it or try to hide it. That's what David tried to do with Bathsheba, and it resulted in the death, him murdering by proxy her husband Uriah. We can't try to hide our sin. We have to admit it. We have to confess it. We have to be honest with it. And I believe that if you made that choice to have an abortion, that your baby is in heaven the same way that my wife and I, we lost a baby. We didn't make a choice, but we had a baby and we had a miscarriage. I remember still going to that first ultrasound, and it's hard to even talk about. And there's the baby. I could see the baby, and there was no heartbeat, no sound. The baby was dead. And I believe that my baby, I don't even know if it was a boy or a girl at this point, but that baby is in heaven. And that I will get to meet him or her there. I have a lot of notes, so I'm going to keep looking down. So I'm not sharing this to be insensitive, but to get at the truth. And the truth is the truth. And we have to be open to that. And I realize that a lot of you have an emotional stake in this, because if I'm right, that there's doctors out there, there are politicians out there who have blood on their hands. They've doctors who've murdered hundreds or thousands of living human beings, and there are women who have allowed it. There's a huge emotional stake in this, but the truth is the truth. So please hear me out. And if I'm right, major changes need to happen, and we cannot be silent about this any more than people should be silent in what was happening in Nazi Germany, or people should have been silent about black slavery back in early America. Those things were morally wrong. So first, I want to just share some general positions. There are people who believe that abortion should be legal up into through birth. Or there's others who have a little more nuanced view that abortion should be legal up to a certain stage of fetal development. It should be legal until they can feel pain. It should be legal until they have a heartbeat. It should be legal until, whatever, viability. Viability simply means that medical technology is advanced to a certain point where once the baby's born, they can keep it alive outside of the womb. Usually that's somewhere around 20 to 22 weeks right now. Or you should only be able to have an abortion when the life of the mother is at stake. Or there should only be abortion under extenuating circumstances in cases of rape Or there, in the final position, there should be no abortion under any circumstance. And I'm going to get into a little bit of detail. First, there's a famous saying by Hillary Clinton, and I want you to think about this. She said abortions should be safe, legal, and rare. So here's my question. Why should abortions be rare? If you are actually, abortion is terminating the life of a living human being inside the womb, then I hope we should all agree that abortions should be not rare, they should never happen. Any more than you should be able to say killing an infant should be safe, legal, and rare. If it's a baby inside the womb, if it's a living human being inside the womb, then that life should be protected. But if it's not a human life, if it's just a non-viable clump of tissue, of cells, just like having an appendix removed, or having a haircut, trimming your nails, removing a kidney, something of that nature, then why should it be rare? It should be as often as anybody wants. There's nothing wrong with it in that case. Just like removing a cyst. I mean, if you have a cyst, you can have it removed. Do it as often as you like, but if it's a life, this question is critical. And when we think back on the greatest moral atrocities of our time, and a couple come to mind. First is slavery. Slavery was a moral atrocity, but they dehumanized black people in order to morally justify doing it. They said that they weren't human in the same way that white people were. They were wrong. And it was people who took a stand on what the Bible taught that acknowledged that they were wrong and fought against it. For the Jews in Nazi Germany, in order to desensitize the German people and the Nazi Party in particular, and the people that were doing these mass killings of Jews, they had to dehumanize them and say that they were not human or not as human as the Aryans or the Supermen, Ubermensch that existed. They had to dehumanize them, make them less than, in order to kill them and oppress them. In the same way, since the decision in 1973 of Roe versus Wade, defending a woman's right to choose, we'll get to that, 60 million abortions have occurred, elective abortions by choice. Imagine if this is true, that every abortion is killing, ending, terminating the life of a living human being. This is a moral atrocity, a national tragedy that we have to come to terms with. And it's a really important question that we need to answer. And the issue really has been divided into two camps, and it's really a false dichotomy. One camp is pro-life, the other camp is pro-choice. Pro-life people, they're generally pro-choice. I don't care. Nobody cares. Let's be honest. Nobody cares what a woman does with her body. No one cares. If a woman wants to cut her hair, if a woman wants to have an appendix removed, breast implants, I don't know, think of anything that a woman can do with her body, piercings, tattoos, anything. Nobody cares what you do with your body. There's only one instance, and that's when it involves another person. All of us have a right and should have that right to do what we want with our own bodies, but not when it involves somebody else. And you've heard the expression that I can swing my fist all I want, but that right to swing my fist ends at the tip of your nose. I am not allowed to harm another person by my free choice. And so the question is not whether or not women have a right to choose what to do with their own bodies. We all agree that they do. The question is whether that other thing inside of them is another person, another living human being. That's what the question is. Go get your tonsils taken out. Go get your adenoids removed. Do what you want with your body, but not when it is taking the life of another person. And that's what we need to talk about. That's what we need to decide is this a life? Because if it's not, it doesn't matter. If it is, it has all the significance in the world. So can we all agree on just these two facts? Can we all agree on these? Number one, women should legally be able to do whatever they want with their own bodies as long as they aren't hurting anyone else. Women and men should be able to do with whatever they want with their own bodies as long as they aren't hurting anyone else. Now, that's a very libertarian expression, and we pass laws about drugs and things like that. That's a whole nother debate that we can have. But let's just all agree that on point number one. The second one is it is always wrong to intentionally kill an innocent human being. Can we agree that it's always wrong to intentionally kill an innocent human being? I hope so. And we're saying intentionally. Isn't there a difference if I'm driving, and God, I hope this never happens, but if I'm driving and maybe I'm not paying attention and I hit somebody and kill them? Is there a difference between that and I actually am able to avoid hitting a person and instead I aim at them and intentionally kill them? Intention is so important. It's called mens rea in the law, that you have an intent to end a life. And that's why the legal end of this, I think, is not prosecuting women for having abortions, because I don't believe those women have intention, that they really believe they're killing a baby, a living human being. At least I hope they don't think that, because that's pretty bad. But I do believe the doctors know what they're doing. And many of them have stopped doing it and come out against it because of that. Now, here's an obvious objection. Here I am, a man, talking about a women's issue. What right do I have to tell women what... I'm a man. What right do I have to tell a woman what to do with her body? Well, let me ask you this. Can I speak on this as a man? I believe I can. Let's say I'm walking in the parking lot over at Walmart, and I see a woman just beating her child who's sitting in the grocery cart, who's screaming and crying. She's upset. She's beating her child. Do I have the right to intervene and stop her? Yes. In fact, that's why we make laws. We make laws to protect the innocent. We make laws to protect the helpless. And we all have this, a say in protecting the lives of other people. So here's the issue at hand. Is the unborn an innocent human life? When does life begin? And let me ask you this question. I listened a lot to Stephanie Gray, who is an expert on this subject. So good. Now it's Stephanie Connors. She got married. But she is so powerful on this issue. And one question she asked in a debate she had with somebody was, when did you begin? Think about this. When did your life begin? When did you become you? Was it the moment you were born? Was it the moment your heart started beating? Was it the moment you were able to feel pain? Was it the moment they cut the umbilical cord and you were no longer attached to your mother? No. You began when the sperm cell of your father met the egg cell of your mother, and the two united and created an entire new set of DNA. That DNA became you. That's the blueprint of you. That's when you became you. So what does the Bible say? The Bible is very clear. The unborn child is a valuable life. Psalm 139, David says, you made all the delicate inner parts of my body, and you knit me together in my mother's womb. Thank you for making me so wonderfully complex. Your workmanship is marvelous. How well I know it. You watched me as I was being formed in utter seclusion, as I was woven together in the dark of the womb. You saw me before I was born. Every day of my life was recorded in your book. Every moment was laid out before a single day had passed. That's just one passage, but the Bible is very clear that we existed before we were actually born, before we exited the birth canal. But back then, when that was recorded, they didn't have modern biology. Has modern science confirmed this? It's sort of ironic and sad that when it serves people, they say follow the science. We're in the midst of this COVID pandemic, and people keep talking about we follow the science, and they say that sort of arrogantly, as if people who interpret the science differently don't believe it. But when following the science goes against your beliefs, what then? Modern science has even more so confirmed that the baby, the fetus, is an innocent human life. When does life begin? Is a person or human life defined by brain activity, the heartbeat, or birth? The answer is simple. Your life began when your father's sperm met your mother's egg in a process called fertilization. 23 chromosomes from your mother, 23 chromosomes from your dad came together and formed one new organism, you. You then have your own unique DNA and a genetic blueprint that will grow from a zygote to an embryo, to a fetus, to an infant, to a toddler, to a child, to an adolescent or teenager. I guess we can still call them human. To an adult. All of those are stages of human development, but it begins at fertilization. That's when a human becomes a human being and a separate being from any other human being. The zygote, the embryo, the fetus, the infant, all of those are just stages of human development. Now, there's many objections to the pro-life argument. One is, well, what if the baby is going to be born and going to have bad circumstances? They're going to be poor. The mother can't afford to take care of the baby. Should the baby then be born, wouldn't it be better for the baby to die than to live in a really bad and difficult and challenging life? I just think that's a stupid objection. I mean, do we kill people that are having bad lives or are having difficulties? Do we value life so little? Wouldn't a better option then be to put the baby up for adoption? There are thousands of parents that want to adopt children. In fact, if they wouldn't make it so stinking expensive, my wife and I would consider doing it ourselves. But it's over $10,000 to adopt a baby. That's ridiculous. We could save lives if the adoption process was easier and less costly. But we don't kill children because their circumstances are difficult. In fact, many of the best people that ever lived and have done the greatest things were born in bad circumstances and developed character by overcoming and surmounting those circumstances. People are not less valuable because they're poor. What about the life and health of the mother? Well, that's a difficult question. If the life of the mother is at stake, very often the life can be saved by delivering a healthy baby. But if the life of the mother is at risk, then maybe that has to be a decision that she has to make. If she's going to die by delivering a baby, I mean, that's a little bit of a gray area. I could take that. The health of the mother, what does that mean? Because when people say, well, a woman should be able to abort a baby for her own life and health, they bundle those things together, and then health becomes psychologically inconvenient or emotionally inconvenient for a woman to carry a baby for 9 months. And so we should abort it. That's the health of the mother, because mental health is part of health. That's not a good reason to kill a baby. This one's tough. Rape or incest. Let me say this first. Any man who rapes a woman ought to be castrated if it can be proven, or killed. The death penalty. It is inexcusable. And we need to love and support the woman involved. But let's go back to the question, is that a human life? Is that a human baby? If that's a human baby, that life needs to be protected. Taking a second life or killing a baby for the crimes of the father should never be a reason, should never be allowed. It shouldn't be able to happen. Just think about this filter. If you wouldn't kill a born child for this reason, you can't do it before birth, because a life is a life and the value is equivalent. Adolescents aren't more valuable than infants. Another one is, what if the baby is going to be born with Down syndrome or some other disability? And I have to say, this whole line of questions sickens me. I know wonderful children with Down syndrome, and they live wonderful, happy, joyful lives that have impacted my life in so many positive ways. They are not less valuable than anyone else. All life has value. I think of Nick Vujicic, who was born without any limbs, without any arms or legs. And he came to a point where he almost drowned himself and wanted to drown himself in the bathtub. And yet he lived, and I encourage you to watch more about his story. I know people that have lived lives with so much suffering, but their lives have value. And it is wrong to say that people born with difficulties, people born with genetic anomalies, are less valuable than people without them. And if you wouldn't kill them after birth, there's no good reason to kill them before birth. How about, it's my body, I should be able to do whatever I want with it? Yes, I agree that you should, but it's not just your body, it's someone else's body. How about, I am personally against it? I've heard this one a lot. I'm personally against it. I wouldn't have an abortion myself. Well, obviously I can't. But I can't tell someone else what to do. That's a wimpy excuse. If you believe laws exist and you vote for people to pass laws to protect people, if you believe that you could intervene with a mother beating her child in the parking lot, or you get upset if you walk in a parking lot and you see it's a really hot day and the windows are rolled up and you see a baby left in a car, what would you do? Would you say, oh, well, that's a mother's right, a woman's right. That's her baby. I can't intervene. I can't say anything. No. You would intervene, and you should intervene. How about this? The child is dependent on the mother while it's inside of her body. Is that a good reason to kill it? Born babies are dependent on their mothers too. In fact, Stephanie Connors makes the argument, and I think it's a really good argument, that the fact that it depends on the mother is even more reason to protect it. If you think about this, let's say you're trained in CPR. You're a certified lifeguard. I'm a certified lifeguard instructor. I taught you how to do CPR. And you're in a restaurant, and one table over is a whole group of paramedics. And one of the paramedics starts choking on their food. Now you have, part of being a lifeguard is called the duty to act. You have the duty to act to save somebody. But you choose not to act because there's other people that can take care of this situation that are actually better trained than you are, right? But so if you don't act, that's not a moral problem because there are other people there who can help this person and do the Heimlich maneuver. Now it's called abdominal thrust. But let's say you're alone with somebody and then this person chokes on something. I mean, they're actually choking. They can't breathe and they're going to die if you don't intervene. Then if you choose not to act, that is a moral crime. You are in effect, by standing by, killing this person. So because you're the only person who's able to help this person and take care of this person and save this person in this situation, that gives you more responsibility, not less responsibility. The same is true of a mother. That person, that baby inside of you, depends on you. And that makes you more responsible for doing the right things. And think about it. When women are having babies, they eat better, they make good choices, they should, and they take it very seriously. There's such a push in our culture to do all the right things for our kids. When our kids are born, you need the right kind of safety seat in your car before you even leave the hospital. You do endless research, or you read the book, What to Expect When You're Expecting, and you make sure you do all the right things to give the babies the right food at the right times. Don't give them honey before 1 year. Don't give them this because they could have an anaphylactic or allergic reaction to it. You try to do everything so perfectly after the baby is born, but 2 minutes before the baby's born and he's inside of you, does that baby somehow have less value than after they're born? And I don't think women really believe that, because when they intend to have the baby, they make the right choices and they take care of it as if it is a real baby, because it is. I want to share about the different types of abortions and the procedures, and I can't get into too much detail because honestly it kills me. There's medical abortions, which are taking a pill. There are surgical abortions, vacuum suction, that sucks the baby out piece by piece, part by part. And then they have to lay the little parts of the baby out to make sure that they got it all. There's D&E abortions, which are dilation and evacuation, which means they dilate the cervix, and they have these big metal clamps that reach inside and rip out. Rip the arms off the baby, rip the legs off the baby, crush the baby's skull until a white fluid runs out. And then they have to line these parts up and make sure they get all the parts. And I don't say this just to gross you out or to freak you out, but we need to know. We need to know what is happening. We need to be honest about what is happening. And if this makes a person sick, if watching it makes a person sick, and our people are revolted and afraid to see it, then maybe we ought to acknowledge that there's a problem with this, and we actually know deep down what is going on. I can't imagine. I have two amazing boys, and after our miscarriage, my second son, Andrew, my wife was pregnant with him. And I remember being in North Carolina and probably about 5 months into the pregnancy, and this was after losing our second child, she started bleeding, and they did an ultrasound, and we found out that the placenta was pulling away from the wall of the uterus. And I was in North Carolina at the time. It was really difficult. My wife had to lay in bed and not move except to go to the bathroom for about a couple months. But the miracle was that it corrected itself from that, and my amazing son Andrew was born. And to imagine that there are people out there, politicians who are pushing this, that 1 week before Andrew was born, there are people that think it is okay if my wife we decided to have him ripped limb from limb. I would do anything to protect my son, either of my sons. How could we value our children's lives so much just because they change location? In other words, when our babies are inside the uterus or inside the birth canal, what really changes from that baby from being inside the birth canal or inside the uterus to being outside? It's just the location. The baby is the same baby, and the baby needs to be protected. To say that now it's out, it's in a different location, it's 9 inches or however long the birth canal is, in a different place, it moved 9 inches, so now it's a valuable human life that we can protect, and you can't kill it then. But before then, when just move it 9 inches so it's inside the woman, that it's okay to kill the baby, it doesn't make any sense to me. Maybe you've been in support of this. Maybe you've done this. Maybe you've driven someone to the clinic. And it may be very, very difficult for you to admit or come to terms with the fact of what you did or what you helped do. And I want to remind you, I am not condemning you. This is the world we live in, that this has gone on and people have just accepted it and seen it as a normal part of life. But it's not. It's wrong. It's evil. And it needs to stop. And people need to not be shamed or afraid to speak out. Men need to not be afraid or shamed to speak out. We need to protect these babies. And I want to tell you, I want to remind you that God is a good God and He forgives. And He will forgive you. And my encouragement, if you've done this, and what I've heard has helped many, many women who have had abortions and realized what they've done afterward, is they rehumanize their baby. They had a funeral for their baby. They have a memorial for their baby. They even have a birthday to remember their baby. And one day they will see their baby again in heaven if they've trusted in Jesus. I realize there may be objections. I realize this is a hot and contested issue. If you have any questions, I'm going to open my YouTube channel to comments. As long as you've watched this whole video and not just throw out things that I've already answered, I'll be happy to answer questions or objections that people have. But remember, it comes down to one thing. Is that a human life inside? Yes, it is human because the parents are human. Yes, it is a life because it has human DNA, and it is a living thing. An innocent human life should always be protected. In fact, innocent human life, who can defend it if not us? The baby has no voice. Be that voice. Let's fight this.